Okay, across the pond, across the Atlantic Ocean in England, we're seeing a very disturbing trend, a trend of Christians being arrested for simply praying and for praying silently. It's unbelievable. We have thought crime arrests are taking place outside of abortion clinics where British law says that silent prayer violates a public space protection order. Here's a clip of one of those arrests.
Is you standing here part of the protest?
No, I'm not protesting.
Are you praying?
I might be praying in my head.
So I'll ask you once more, will you voluntarily come with us now to the police station for me to ask you some questions about today and other days where there are allegations that you've broken public space protection?
If I've got a choice, then no.
Okay, well then you're under arrest.
Folks, I tell you, this is such a vivid reminder of how thankful we should be regarding our First Amendment freedoms right here in the United States. But still, they are under attack here in the United States. And we are just watching this take place in Europe, and many of us are saying this is unbelievable. Is what is happening there? Could it be coming here? What's behind the erosion of some of these basic freedoms in European countries? How bad is it getting? Are we, as I said, here in America, are we next in line? Well, joining me now live from London to discuss this is Peter McIlvenna. He is the co-founder of Hearts of Oak, which is a freedom of speech alliance. He also works in the office of the UK's House of Lords. Peter, thank you for your work. Welcome back to Washington Watch. We appreciate you staying up late to be with us.
Thanks for having me on, Jody. Great to be with you.
Well, thank you so much. All right, man, the American audience might find this whole situation difficult to comprehend. So can you just kind of explain it from the British government's perspective? What's behind all these arrests?
Well, we have had a push. Certainly the abortion industry in the UK has pushed for restrictions outside abortion clinics for 10 years. Our abortion lobby is not as vocal as yours. The problem is the lobby for life is very less silent also, and we have very little pushback, certainly from churches, from organisations on the pro-life side. For 10 years, BPAS, the British Pregnancy Advisory Group, the largest abortion provider in the UK, has pushed for what they call a buffer zone, and that's a space where no one can be there protesting or opposing the abortions happening. So the first time another order, so while that has been fought through the system for 10 years, they found out they could use another piece of legislation to restrict. And that was first used actually just 3 miles from my house in an abortion clinic in West London. And that made it illegal for you to do anything that may oppose or impede the running of that clinic. That was the first thing in 2018. Now we move further on, and you showed one of the stories, which was Victoria. We've had another story in the last maybe 10 days of a father, a military man, a veteran, and he went with his wife for an abortion. That was maybe 18 years ago. Now deeply regrets it, as is the story probably across the country here in the UK and America. And he was simply praying outside the abortion clinic. He was arrested. So this legislation is supposed to be to stop people shouting, being aggressive outside. And I can understand if there's a discussion around that, but these people are simply praying. And so it does seem as though the legislation that has been in place and this further piece of legislation, which will enforce these buffer zones, which actually is in the House of Lords in next week on the 30th. And that will seek to expand this across the country, which will in effect make praying outside an abortion clinic illegal.
Well, okay, that's all right. So movement is underway. That's encouraging to hear. When you're talking about the average person there in England, as they are watching this, witnessing this? What's the reaction of just average people?
It's a topic that is never brought up. One of the many things I love about you across the pond there is a passion. There is a something that wells up within people on the issue of life, and you see it on both sides, and it means you can have a debate. The problem in the UK is, and I've been to so many churches. I've talked to so many church leaders. I remember talking to different churches in that area when that first restriction came in 2018 and talking to them. And their response was, Peter, you're right. We agree with you. Every life is important. We just need to be very careful because we could hurt people by saying that. And that is a fear of offense, a fear of man, more than a fear of God. So that's the silence in the churches. In the public, it's an issue that is never discussed. I looked at the newspaper articles whenever this was proposed, whenever the votes happened in Parliament. A lot of the big votes happened in October last year to push this through. And no newspaper carried any statement from any pro-life group. It was simply from the abortion side. So the public are not even getting both sides of the argument. They're simply getting a one-sided position. And if the churches aren't telling them what to think, if the media are not telling them what to think, if it doesn't come up in a conversation, then people simply have not processed. And it's a scary indictment, I think, on our society when our public have not even thought through this issue. And abortions often happen privately. They're not discussed, one, because of shame, because of many issues. And the problem is it's not out in the open. And if it was discussed around the dinner table, in the media, in our churches, people would be equipped and they could have the discussion. And I think until that happens, I don't see any change. The last bill was passed.
Peter, let me interrupt you if I can. We've got about 30 seconds left. And thank you for staying up. What message would you give our audience here in America who are listening to you right now, real quickly?
I would say pray for the churches to have a backbone and to speak up and to take charge. I would also say to you in the States that this will come to you. We are often 5-10 years behind on these things. And what you see in the UK, I hope, is a warning, a wake-up call to you over in the US.
Peter McIlvenna, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch. Thank you for the information you give us. Keep the torch ablaze. Go get some rest.